Did Drew really appear in the trailer disguised and no one noticed? Or does Poppy actually have a connection with one of Gru's main enemies? Despicable Me is coming, and several details about the story are still confidential, but many secrets have already been uncovered so far. That's why we've gathered things that will or might happen in the 6th film of the Minions and Gru for you to check out now. Maxim le Mal and Gru were childhood friends. If there's one thing Despicable Me movies excel at, it's using nostalgia in the plot. We see this when we find out how Gru started wanting to steal the moon, or when we find out that Gru had never dated before because of a childhood trauma. For this reason, there's a 100% chance that in the new movie, we'll see Gru's past once again, and thus we'll end up discovering that the main enemy of Gru in the next film of the franchise was actually his classmate in adolescence. If you paid close attention to the latest trailers, you noticed that Gru, Poppy, along with Gru Jr. and the Minions invade a place. Because of various details, it became clear that it's some sort of academy for supervillains. The most likely theory is that Gru is there by demand of Maxim after he kidnapped the family of our favorite villain. The villain would demand in return that Gru fetch something from their old school related to the time they studied there and were classmates. What would it be? We still don't know, but it's definitely something related to their embarrassing past, and it's surely the reason they're enemies to this day. I'm counting the days to uncover this secret.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Drew appears in the film. Well, folks, Drew appeared in the movie and practically no one noticed. At least, that's a theory that's been going around, and it makes total sense. Follow the reasoning. We see Silas Ramsbottom warning Gru that he and his family are in danger. Then, they go to a city and start living a common, uneventful life. But somehow, Maxima and Valentina end up finding the whole family. At least, that's what he thinks, since the person he imagines would be Gru is actually Drew. Remember in the 3rd movie when Gru and Drew play pretending to be each other and vice versa? Well, the theory says that they'll do the same thing in the movie, so Gru and Gru Jr. will be the only ones not captured. A big piece of evidence for this theory is when we see Gru wearing a pink polo shirt and waving a lot. Honestly, that scene fits much more with Drew than with Gru and his meticulous ways. Don't you agree? Maxime le Mal being Scarlet Overkill's son. Another very hot possibility circulating on the internet is that Maxime, Gru's pursuer in this movie, would actually be the son of none other than Scarlet Overkill, the same one who was the Minions' boss in their first movie. If you remember well, you'll recall that at the end of the movie, young Gru freezes Scarlet and steals the crown of England from the hands of the supervillain. It was obvious that Scarlet memorized that very different face of Gru. What almost nobody knows is that she and her husband could have had a child at that time who ended up being completely alone after the duo ended up in jail thanks to Mini Gru and the Minions. And you know what supports this possibility? The fact that both Herb and Scarlet are extremely elegant in their way of dressing and in their behaviors as well. And we can see that both Maxima and Valentina are figures extremely linked to fashion by the clothes and accessories they wear. If all of this is true, Gru and Maxima's story will be even older than we imagined. If you think it would be surprising to see someone related to Scarlet in the new movie, come join our team. All you have to do is click the subscription button if you're not subscribed yet, of course. Poppy is Vector's daughter. Poppy is a super fan of Gru who wants to be a supervillain just like he was. And for sure, Gru and she will meet because they live in the same building. But the fact is that the town of Mayflower is a witness protection location created by the Anti-Villain League, which means Poppy must also live there because she's being protected from someone. But who could it be? We believe it would be Mr. Perkins, the manager of the Bank of Evil, who would actually be trying to take custody of his, believe it or not, granddaughter, which would make Poppy the daughter of Vector himself, but who would have lived her whole life with her mother, since in the first movie we can see he lives alone. That would explain why Poppy would live alone in a town that is completely fake and doesn't even exist on the map. If this is confirmed, I would definitely be very surprised, especially by the fact that Vector had a girlfriend someday. Could Vector appear? If the last possibility happens, it would be very, very likely that even Vector himself would appear in Despicable Me 4. After all, it wouldn't be a coincidence that Illumination released the short film Mooned a few months before Gru's new movie, right? That would be a strategy to anticipate that Vector himself might be appearing once again. And of course, he would be seeking revenge against Gru and his family. The most likely thing would actually be for Vector to appear at the end of the film, already creating a connection to Despicable Me 5, where he could be the main antagonist once again. The thing is, at the end of Mooned, Vector himself, while trying to leave the moon and return to Earth, ends up in an even more distant place, Mars. But I believe his father won't rest until he brings his son back home, which is directly related to the next thing that could happen in the next film of the Minions and Gru franchise. Mr. Perkins is behind everything. everything. As it becomes clear in the first Despicable Me movie and Minions 2, if there's one thing the wicked Mr. Perkins loves in the world, it's his misfit son. So, it's practically impossible to imagine that he would let slide what Gru did to Vector at the end of the first film. What we believe will actually happen is that Mr. Perkins will be the one behind Maxim's escape from some maximum security prison. And contrary to what we might imagine, his plan wouldn't be to get revenge on Gru. It would actually be something much bigger. While everyone, especially the anti-villain league, was busy trying to protect Gru's family from Maxim and capturing the villain once again, Mr. Perkins could organize a search expedition to bring Vector back home. This should happen either during the course of the movie or near the end, setting up the segue we talked about earlier for the next Despicable Me film. Introduction of Minion 900. This one is definitely more of a wish than a theory, because we know it will happen in one of the next films in the franchise. As we've mentioned in other videos on this channel, officially there are 899 minions, which is an extremely suggestive number since only one minion is missing to complete the 900 count. This indicates that there's a minion lost somewhere in the world, and the biggest possibility would be that this character is actually the first and only female minion. Just the possibility of the female minion appearing already raises the expectation for the next movie extremely high. This is because, in a way, it would explain the absence of all the other minions who don't appear in the trailer, who could be on a mission to locate and bring back the female minion who may have been missing for decades or even centuries. If you also believe that the female minion will still appear someday, comment below, #900. Head of the Academy being Gru's aunt. When Gru invades the supervillain academy, we can clearly see the name of the principal of the training place for evil apprentices. Her name is Principal Uberschlecht, and this name of the evil old lady is quite unusual and of European origin, and when we translate it from German, we see that Übel means evil and Schlecht means bad, which means the lady's name is literally very evil. And as we know, Gru's family is originally from Fredonia, a distant country where the inhabitants dress like Germans and speak German. So there's a great chance not only that Principal Uberschlecht is from Fredonia, but also that she belongs to the Gru family lineage, since we know that Gru's grandfather, John Gru, had siblings too, which is totally in line with the possibility of Poppy being related to Gru. Seriously, tell me you also noticed that Poppy's nose is exactly like Gru and Dru's. And if there's one thing we all know about animated movies, it's that nothing is there by chance, which means there's almost a 100% chance that Poppy is related to Gru's family. Of course, this would be on her mother's side. In other words, she could very well be an unknown niece of Gru and Dru whom they never met, or perhaps a distant cousin. This would explain the striking similarity between the two characters. Are the minions imprisoned? Finally, we couldn't fail to mention that, at least explicitly, we didn't notice the presence of any of the minions, who as we mentioned could be on a search around the world for the female minion. But besides this possibility, there's also the chance that both Dru and the minions have been captured by Gru and ended up being imprisoned by the anti-villain league, since at the end of the third movie, they simply left to do mischief along with Gru's brother. Of course, since they are harmless, they won't need to be imprisoned for long, and we even believe that Dru will be released to help Gru rescue his family, just like all the minions too. These are the 10 things that will or may happen in Despicable Me 4. While we wait for the movie to come out, we picked out 2 incredible videos for you to watch with us. I heard the one on the left is sensational. Thanks, and enjoy the video.